flat, easy on the outside. Top stitch on either side of the seam allowance. And we look, but you have to look inside, because remember when we had the top stitch on both sides of the seam allowance? And when we turned it up inside out, we had the figure 8 going around. That figure 8 on the inside was what kind of a stitch?
Cover.
Cover stitch. Well, in this case, we don't have a cover stitch. We have 2 top stitches. So it's very important that if you see the top stitch, turn it underneath and make sure that this is what you've got. Now you've got a butterfly welt seam. Okay, I'll pass that around. All right, so now that's your next set of seams. When it comes to the pocket, bag, if we're gonna have a really good, expensive pair of pants, the lining right here, in the lining, in menswear, when we have this lining in the front, and that's pretty much where we're gonna have men's lining, is always in the front. In menswear, we will call this a half lining. In women's wear, a half lining means the entire front all the way down. No, I'm sorry, I take that back. In women's wear, we don't do this. If we're doing half lining, it'll have the lining in the front and the back. In menswear, we rarely do lining in the front and the back, and we rarely go all the way down because of tailoring. All we do is we stop it at the knee. Now, we will line men's pants all the way down front and back if we're using a very tropical, a lightweight tropical, very transparent fabric for men. Then we will line it all the way through so we don't see underwear lining or anything like that, visible panty lines, anything like that. So here is a half lining. If we line it in the back in menswear, it's a full lining. When it comes to women's wear, the lining goes all the way down and it's loose. Yes, it's a separate piece. It's like sewing up a separate pair of pants. Whereas here, it's been attached to the side seam and the inseam. All right, we're going to go back to the seams in a minute. But we have our pocket bag, we have our welt pockets. In the back here, we have our butterfly seam. And in your case and in your case, is your seam allowance much wider at the waistline? You're looking at the front, the back. It is wider at the back, at the waistline, and yours is wider at the waistline. In menswear, we do that because men have a tendency to expand as they get older, so we can tailor it and we can let it out. Or in some cases, it can be taken in. So that's, menswear is made to be tailored. Women's wear, we don't tailor that much. So that's why we have a 2-piece waistband. Now, when we go into this, I'm gonna pull old Eve out. Let's see what he's got. All right, so Eve has got, this is a pretty worn pair of pants. He has the half lining. At the junction point. Now the junction point is where all 4 seams meet. Your center front seam, where your fly is, your back seam, which also has a name, I'll give that to you in a minute, and then you have your 2 seams inside the legs. So, when it comes to actual names, when we're talking about pants, the seam that goes down center front from waistband to this T-seam right here, which we call our junction point. This is my rise. From center front to junction point, that is your rise. When we go from center back to that same junction point, which is your T-seam, it makes a T, this is called your back rise or seat. Now the front rise and the seat will always, the front rise will always be shorter than the seat. Then, when I take the measurement from center back through the legs and come all the way back up to the front of the pant at center front, that entire U shape, that's called your crotch. So here's what we've got. Center front to junction point, from here to here at the T-seam. So we have our seam here, we have our side inseam, our left side, our right side. We have our seam going to this junction point. This is your rise from center back to that same junction point. We have our back rise, or seat, because this is where you sit. It's your sit down. When I measure it, when I add this measurement and this measurement together, this entire measurement, front to back, is called my crotch. In some cases, at the junction point, we will have a triangular piece, or in some cases, this fabric will run from the shield all the way down past the junction point. This is called a crotch shield. And it's there to prevent wear. It's shielding the fabric from rubbing against itself and wearing away.
I said, why don't we have that for women?
They don't have.
All right, so let's take a look at what we've got here. And here we have our back pocket, but we only have one piece of fabric here. That's called a what? What kind of a pocket? Since there's only what kind?
Single welt.
Single welt, all right. And you already know that the pockets themselves at the side are start in / inward. That's your / pocket. Let's get in and take a look at the pocket bag. All right, this particular pocket bag, well, doesn't have the coin pouch. Okay. However, Eve did this for Beckerex, so it's not part of his normal line, so he cheapened it out a little bit. All right, let's take a look at what we're going here. So, ladies, take your scissors, and at the back seam right here, flip it open. Right in the middle seam. Flip it open. And once you get past the facing, so you past the facing, take both ends. You having a hard time? You need help?
Whoops. No. I think I just got it too far.
He's getting a real big hire.
All right, I want you to grab both ends, like this.
Oh.
Grab Right.
Crazy.
You got too much money.
Oh, my. It literally hurt.
That's fair enough. That's good.
That better not have been my size.
All right, so choose a side, and with your scissors, I want you to cut the waistband off, all the way across.
He ripped it and that was cutting it apart.
There we go. All right, now what you're going to do is this facing, I want you to clip it away, because we have to see what's going on inside. So, this is hand stitched. And that's not unusual to have it hand stitched. If they were to use a machine, they'd use a blind stitch so that it wouldn't show through. So we're going to open this up. I'm going to cut off the top. Whoever was wearing this was disgustingly filthy.
Ew.
All right. Now, we open this up, and we can see that at the waistband, instead of having fusible, I have my sew-in. All right, non-fusible. But the facing itself, this is where it's going to be a little more difficult for you guys. I want you to clip it open, and we're going to tear it away. Tear the waistband away so we have just the facing, and we can look at all the components of the facing. So down here we have our curtain. Now the curtain rarely has anything in it. But inside inside the apron up here, we have a lot going on. So when we put it away, you guys are so slow. Oh. That's yeah, just rip. When I can't do anything with it, so let's rip it. All right, I'm going to tear this away. Now, I want you to see all the layers of the interfacing.
Jesus Christ.
We have one layer here. We have a second layer right here on top. We have 1 and 2 and 3 layers of interfacing. One layer very stiff, very hard, one a little bit more soft, and that's put there so it will slide back and forth. This is your support. That is what? It could, yeah, it could. That's a lot of stuff going on in the waistband that has to be put into the waistband before it's even finished. That's why slacks get to be more expensive the better the quality. So I'll pass that around for you. Whoops, sorry. All right. I'm going to pass these around also because I want you to see how many different types of
This is an emergency. This is an emergency.
interfacing there are. Now, I don't expect you to identify all the types of interfacings, except in this case. And that's why I'm passing it around, because I want you to feel this very hard buckram. Here, we don't have buckram. This is just a woven interface. But this hard surface, this hard piece, this is your buckram. I want you to see it. I want you to feel it. So that you know when it comes to the waistbands, we do put this in. And the reason I want you to see this is when we get into evening wear, you're going to see this in another form called horsehair braid. Okay? I want you to look at that. Did everybody get to see the seams? All right, so let's go into everything here. We have our two-piece waistband that has an extension and a tab. We have two types of flies, called either this one that is more complicated, which is a French fly, or one that doesn't have the button, anchor button and buttonhole, which is your standard fly. We have our measurement from center front to junction point, which is your rise. From center back to junction point is your seat. The entire measurement all the way across is your crotch. We have our out seam. We have our inseam. Okay, now I want you to remember that next week, because when we talk about the out seam and inseam, in fitting, we're going to have a completely different term for that complete area. So I want you to remember that. We have different pockets. We have our inseam pocket, slash pocket, Western style slash pocket, and welt seamed. This is a pair of pleated pants because with the pleat it has a beginning and an end. Then we have these things that we put our belts through called carriers. When we go on the inside, we have our pocket bag. And with the pocket bag, a lot of times you'll have the small coin pocket. With the lining, we will have the lining in the front, which in menswear is a half lining, and it goes to the knee. With women's wear, it goes all the way down and is loose. We have our crotch shield. We have our apron, curtain, and curtain stay. We have our interfacing. We have our buckram. We have our buttons. 4-hole, 24-line button. There are 3 different types of buttons: a 4-hole, 2-hole, and a shank. And I think that's pretty much it. Oh, and your seams. I've given you all the seams. You know about your butterfly and your welted butterfly seam. Yes?
What's the metal bit in the pants, like the hooks that are in there?
This right here, this is called a hook and bar.
Okay.
And that's for heavy work, for heavy duty. Hook and bar, as opposed to the lingerie hook and eye that we saw on the blouses and the snaps. This is a hook and bar. Now with the lingerie hook and eye, we're going to see a lot of that when we go into dresses. Okay, so this anchor, this is there to prevent the zipper from moving. This keeps it from opening up. This is really just decoration. I'm sorry? No, this is my hook and my bar.
So the button just for the front is just for decoration?
It really is more for decoration.
Okay.
The finishing off the pant this way makes it much nicer. But if we don't put the button there, it's going to be flopping around.
Yeah.
However, we will have pants that won't have that. Like here, where it just goes up. Then we won't have an anchor button. Or, well, actually we could. It all depends on what the style is, what we're looking for. All right, are there any questions? Are you sure? All right, I'm going to give you a break because our guest is going to be here in 5 minutes, so take a 5-minute break.